My husband Richard collected masterpieces. Our penthouse apartment, a sterile expanse of white walls and polished concrete overlooking the Chicago skyline, was his private museum. He curated every object within it with a cold, discerning eye: the stark, minimalist furniture, the imposing sculptures, the abstract canvases that were worth more than the building they hung in. I was his most beautiful and most overlooked acquisition. A wife of 40 with the right pedigree and a quiet, appreciative elegance that looked good at gallery openings. He saw me but only as part of the collection, a lovely piece to be positioned and admired for how well I complemented the space. He had no idea I had already given the key to his museum to his son. It wasn't a physical key. It was something far more intimate and dangerous: a shared secret, a conversation, an idea that had taken root in the long-neglected gardens of my mind and was beginning to bloom wild and vibrant in the cold, sterile air of the life he had so carefully curated for us. The morning began as it always did, with the silent, choreographed precision of a museum opening its doors for the day. It was a play I had memorized, a performance I gave to an audience of one. Act 1. The automated blinds. With a soft electronic whir, they would ascend, revealing a panoramic, breathtaking view of the city waking below. I always woke before him, a silent sentinel in our shared bed, my body already humming with the low-grade, persistent anxiety that had become my constant companion. Act 2. The morning ritual. The quiet, guttural gurgle of the imported espresso machine. The sharp, decisive click of the toaster. The precise circular motion of a tiny silver spoon stirring a single lump of raw sugar into his demitasse. Every sound, every movement was a note in the symphony of our predictability. It was a melody that was supposed to convey sophistication and order, a quiet hymn for a secure and well-lived life. But lately, it had started to sound like a lament. Act 3. His entrance. At precisely 7:10 a.m., Richard would emerge from his dressing room, a man already armored in the uniform of his world. His suit was a fortress of impeccable Italian wool, his tie a perfectly dimpled knot of muted silk, every strand of his distinguished silver-streaked hair locked firmly into place. He was a portrait of discipline and aesthetic control, a man who moved through the world as if it were an auction catalog he could command at will. He would lean in and deliver his customary kiss to my cheek. It was no longer a gesture of affection. It was a perfunctory checklist item, a dry, papery touch that neither asked for nor offered anything real. It was his final approval of the morning's flawless presentation. "Will you be late tonight, darling?" I would ask, my voice a soft, cultured echo in the gleaming, cavernous kitchen. I already knew the answer. The question was just another one of my lines in our well-rehearsed script. He wouldn't look up from his phone, his thumb already swiping through auction alerts and messages from his gallery managers. "Yes, a dinner with the board from the Art Institute. Don't wait up." And just like that, with a final distracted glance at his reflection in the polished chrome of the refrigerator, he would be gone. The heavy front door would click shut with the sound of a vault being sealed, leaving behind the faint, expensive scent of his vetiver cologne and a penthouse filled with the echoing ghosts of our routine. I would stand motionless for a long time, the artisanal toast cooling on my plate, my own tea turning lukewarm in a delicate porcelain cup. The quiet would descend then, no longer peaceful but predatory, a second skin that clung to me, suffocating me with its immense, indifferent weight. I would move through the apartment, an automaton performing her programmed tasks, plump the perfectly placed sofa cushions, wipe down the already spotless marble countertops, run a finger along the dustless frames of the monumental canvases that adorned our walls. This was the dance I had perfected over 15 years of marriage. the careful, precise steps of a life built on small certainties and a crushing, soul-deep lack of surprise. I had chosen this. I had actively, desperately wanted this, hadn't I? The safety, the security, the world of beauty and culture, the complete and total absence of the financial instability that had haunted my academic parents. But then there was the conversation I had overheard. It had happened a few weeks ago, a single careless crack in the flawless facade of our life that had sent deep, resonant tremors through my carefully ordered world. Richard had been in his home office, the heavy, soundproof door left slightly ajar. He was on the phone with a fellow gallery owner, his voice relaxed, casual, a little boastful. The words had drifted out and landed in my chest with the dull, concussive force of a physical blow. "Oh, Isabel is wonderful," he'd said, his tone one of a connoisseur describing a valuable piece. "She has a fantastic eye, a great asset at these events. The marriage is solid, rock solid. The passion phase is long over, of course, but that's to be expected. You trade that initial fire for a lifetime of comfortable, elegant companionship. It's a good deal, all things considered. A good deal." He had said the words so carelessly, so transactionally, as if our life together was a piece he had acquired at a favorable price. But for me in that moment, it was an ignition. It was the flick of a match in a room I hadn't even realized was filled with gasoline fumes. I had sat down heavily on the edge of our bed, a bed so large it felt like a continent, the expensive mattress sighing under the sudden weight of the years we had spent becoming so incredibly comfortable. My reflection in the vast frameless mirror had stared back at me, a woman of 40, her face a mask of calm composure. But beneath that placid surface, I had felt a fault line, a deep tectonic instability that was trembling, threatening to break everything apart. My hand had moved mechanically to the bottom drawer of my dresser. I'd opened it, my fingers searching past neat stacks of silk scarves and cashmere sweaters. There it was, a box. Not a small jeweled box containing lingerie, but something far more precious, far more damning. A box filled with my old academic notebooks, my research papers, the dissertation I had abandoned on 15th century Florentine art when I had agreed to marry Richard and become the curator of his life instead of my own. The crisp yellowed pages were filled with my handwriting, with my passion, with my ideas. It was a tiny, dusty coffin for the woman I used to be. And then Liam came home. Liam was Richard's son, the product of a first marriage to a fiery intellectual woman who had refused to be curated. When I had first married Richard, Liam was a quiet, bookish 12-year-old who seemed to resent me on principle. Our relationship over the years had been one of polite, careful distance. But now at 22, he had returned home for the summer after finishing his master's degree in art history, a temporary pause before he was set to begin an internship at the Getty in Los Angeles. The change in him was immediate, profound, and deeply unsettling. The boy who had mumbled his greetings was gone. In his place was a man who moved with a quiet, deliberate confidence. He was tall and lean, with his mother's intense, intelligent eyes and his father's handsome, chiseled features. He didn't just look at you. He saw you. It began subtly, a series of small, almost imperceptible tremors before the earthquake. I was in the library one afternoon, a grand 2-story room lined with Richard's collection of first editions, all of them preserved behind glass, like butterflies pinned to a board. I was running a soft cloth over the spines, my usual mindless task, when Liam came in. "I didn't know you were interested in early Renaissance portraiture," he said, his voice startling me in the profound quiet. He was pointing to a book I held in my hand, one I hadn't even realized I'd picked up. "It was my specialty," I said, my voice soft, almost rusty from disuse. A long time ago? My father told me you studied art history, he said, moving closer, but he never mentioned your focus. He probably doesn't remember I said a bitter edge to my voice that I couldn't conceal. Liam's gaze was sharp, perceptive. He walked over to the shelves, his fingers tracing the titles. He has an incredible collection here, he said. But it's all about the names, the investment. It's like he owns the signatures, not the art. I was so taken aback by his insight, by the fact that he saw the very thing that had haunted me for years, that I couldn't speak. What was your dissertation on? He asked, his eyes meeting mine. And so I told him. For the first time in over a decade, I spoke about my work, my passion. I talked about Botticelli, about the subtle symbolism in his paintings, about the theories I had been developing. Liam listened not with polite indulgence, but with a focused intellectual curiosity. He asked intelligent, probing questions. He challenged my ideas. He saw the art historian I had buried. The atmosphere in the room began to shift. The air grew heavy, charged, the silence between our words suddenly full of unspoken, dangerous things. He moved to a large painting Richard had recently acquired, a dark, moody, abstract piece. Dad loves this one, he said. He says it's a significant work from the artist's blue period. He says it will be worth double what he paid for it in 5 years. I added, unable to stop myself. Liam smiled a slow, knowing smile. He reached out, his fingers hovering just inches from the canvas. But what do you see, Isabel? He had never called me Isabel before. It was always the more formal, distant Clara. The use of my real given name was a deliberate, intimate act. I stepped closer, standing beside him, our shoulders almost touching. I see loneliness. I said, my voice barely a whisper, a sense of a vast empty space and one small desperate slash of red trying to break through it. His gaze shifted from the painting to my face. Yes, he said, his voice soft. That's what I see too. He reached out as if to point to the slash of red, and his hand brushed against mine. The contact was electric, a jolt of pure, unadulterated connection, both intellectual and physical. A hot flush crept up my neck. My heart, a lazy, contented muscle, just moments before began to beat a frantic, unfamiliar rhythm against my ribs. We both pulled back as if burned. The moment was broken, but the echo of it remained a resonant hum in the air between us. I should go, he said, his voice suddenly thick. I have some emails to send. He retreated from the library, his footsteps hasty on the polished floor. I was left alone, my pulse thundering in my ears. His attention, his validation, his shared passion. It was a jolt to a system I thought had been permanently powered down. I felt terrifyingly, exhilaratingly alive. And God help me, I wanted to feel it again. That evening, I dressed for dinner with more care than I had in years. I chose a simple, elegant silk blouse, a deep emerald green that brought out the flecks of color in my eyes, a blouse that Richard had never once commented on. Across the dinner table, Liam was quiet, his eyes mostly on his plate. But I felt his awareness of me in every small gesture, in every beat of silence. When our hands brushed as he passed me the salt, the contact was like a low-voltage current. His eyes flicked up to meet mine for a fraction of a second, and in that fleeting charged glance, an entire forbidden conversation passed between us. The days that followed were a master class in denial and desire. I told myself it was nothing, a fluke, a shared intellectual interest. But the truth was, a dangerous seed had been planted, and I was the one watering it with every stolen glance, every carefully engineered moment of proximity. Richard, blissfully unaware, was consumed by the planning of a major auction, leaving Liam and me to orbit each other in the quiet, spacious apartment. One afternoon, I found him in the library again, poring over one of my old notebooks. "Your theories on the symbolism of the flora in Primavera are brilliant," he said, looking up as I entered. "They're more insightful than half the papers I read in my master's program. You should publish this, Isabel." The praise, the use of my name, the genuine belief in my intellect. It was a potent, intoxicating cocktail. "That woman doesn't exist anymore," I said, a familiar bitterness in my voice. "I think she does," he replied, his gaze intense. "I think she's just been waiting for someone to see her." We started having secret seminars in the library whenever Richard was out. We would spread my old books and papers across the large mahogany table and talk for hours, debating, arguing, and sharing ideas. He encouraged me to start writing again, to pick up the threads of my abandoned dissertation. One sunny afternoon, under the guise of running an errand, we went to the Art Institute together. As we walked through the galleries, a profound sense of homecoming washed over me. Standing beside him, discussing the brushstrokes of a Monet or the emotional weight of a Rothko, I felt more myself than I had in years. It was in the Impressionist wing, standing before a painting of a solitary woman looking out a window, that the emotional dam inside me finally broke. "Sometimes I feel like her," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. Trapped in a beautiful room, just watching the world go by. Liam didn't say anything. He just reached out and gently took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. It was not a gesture of pity, but of profound, unwavering solidarity. He saw me. He understood. The first kiss happened later that week, back in the library, surrounded by the art that symbolized both my dormant passion and my husband's cold world of commerce. We had been arguing heatedly but happily over some obscure point of iconography. The intellectual energy between us was so potent, it was almost a physical presence. In the middle of a sentence, I looked up at him, and the words died in my throat. He was looking at me with an expression of such raw, undisguised longing that it stole my breath. He closed the small distance between us, his hands coming up to frame my face. "Isabel," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. And then he kissed me. It was not a tentative, questioning kiss. It was a kiss of profound, terrifying recognition. A kiss that said, "I know you. I see you. I want you." My hands came up to clutch his shirt, my body surrendering to a need I hadn't let myself acknowledge. It was a shedding of skins, a dismantling of the carefully constructed lies we had both been living. It was not just an act of passion, but an act of profound, terrifying intimacy. The affair was a fever that consumed the rest of the summer. Richard went to Europe for a month, a whirlwind tour of art fairs and auctions in London, Paris, and Basel. His absence created a vacuum that Liam and I rushed to fill. Every moment was ours. The apartment, once my beautiful, lonely prison, became our sanctuary. Our connection was not just physical, it was deeply, intensely intellectual. We would spend our days in the library, my old research spread out around us, our minds meeting and sparring. He would challenge my ideas, push me to think deeper, and celebrate my insights with a passion that was exhilarating. And at night, we would make love with a desperation born of years of emotional starvation. He was falling in love with me, with the woman he had resurrected from the archives of my own life. And the terrifying, undeniable truth was, I was falling in love with him too. The guilt was a constant bitter taste in the back of my throat. I couldn't look at the priceless art on the walls without feeling like a fraud, a liar, a stranger in my own life. But the feeling of being truly alive, of being truly seen, was a drug I couldn't give up. The call that ended everything came on a Tuesday afternoon. It was Richard calling from his hotel in Switzerland, his voice buzzing with a triumphant energy. "Isabel, you won't believe it," he said. "I got it. The de Kooning. It's a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. It cost a fortune, but it will be the cornerstone of the new collection. He went on and on, describing the painting not in terms of its beauty or its emotional power, but in terms of its investment potential, its provenance, its auction history. I listened, my heart growing colder with every word. "That's wonderful, darling," I said, my voice a hollow echo of the supportive wife I was supposed to be. "Actually, I had an idea I wanted to run by you. I was thinking I could curate a small exhibition from some of the lesser-known pieces in our collection. A sort of hidden gems show. I've even started writing the catalog notes." He laughed, a dismissive, indulgent sound. "That's a cute hobby, darling. A nice little project to keep you busy. We'll talk about it when I get back. Now I have to run a dinner with a very important collector." He hung up, leaving me in the profound, echoing silence of the penthouse. A cute hobby. A nice little project. In that single careless phrase, he had dismissed my passion, my intellect, my entire being. I had just spent a month feeling more alive, more intellectually stimulated, more myself than I had in 15 years. And to him, it was just a cute hobby. I looked around the vast white room at the masterpieces on the walls. They were cold, silent, and incredibly lonely, just like me. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Liam hadn't saved me. He had simply held up a mirror, and I could no longer ignore the vibrant, passionate woman who was staring back at me. I don't know what I will do when Richard returns. I don't know if I have the courage to light the match that will burn my life to the ground. But I know with a certainty that is as terrifying as it is liberating that I cannot stay in this quiet, beautiful museum. My final act as its curator will be to set myself free. The key Liam gave me wasn't to the apartment, it was to my own cage. The rain had come and washed away all the lines, and I was left standing in the ruins, finally terribly free. This story is a reminder that the most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. If you have ever felt trapped by the choices you've made, or if you've ever had a connection that forced you to see your own truth, please share your experience in the comments. For more stories that explore the complicated, messy, and beautiful landscape of the human heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your voice is welcome here. Thank you for listening.